Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, supernatural, and the metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack, turn the lights off on the way back, find yourself a nice comfy spot, and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey, Jim, how are you? Debz, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you guys?
We are doing fine, thank you. And, Jim and I are so very honored that you're here with us tonight and giving us some of your time so we can pick your brain.
All right. Pick away, guys. Now, I'm the one who's honored, though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So, on this episode, we're talking with Debz Shakti, right?
That's right.
Right. And now she's a professional quantum hypnotherapist, an open channel, a psychic medium, and offer professional PSI services, including Energy Alchemy, ET Contact and Paranormal Experiences Counseling. Deb, thank you for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, that pretty much sums it up. But I'm pretty old, so I have a lot of stuff packed in there. I always tell people I'm a highly distractible girl. So, you never know what you're going to get from day to day. But seriously, I was born this way. I came in with a lot of the psi stuff already turned on. And it was just normal to me to be able to read people well, to perceive and manipulate energy, to perceive the other layers of our being, other beings in our, in the overlay of our environment, the multidimensional environment, and, and so forth, and converse and interact with them. So, but, that kind of got shut down as I got a little older. My parents just thought I was really imaginative and creative child. But, when it came time to go to parochial school, it really got shut down. I was told, you don't talk about that. That's not, that's against our belief system. You'll get punished and so forth. So, and I was a pretty introverted little kid, and I tried to be really good and play all the rules. So I didn't talk about it a lot. But, I grew up in the mid 50s to 70s, my growing up years. And so I grew up in the hippie years. And by the time I got to be about 13, I realized there were other people like me and other people having experiences like me, and that it was safe to talk about with those people. That was also about the time I started discovering yoga, spirituality, meditation, psychology, and, all things metaphysical. So it all kind of came together for me that way. And then I went on because I'm kind of straight up and down between a scientific person and a spiritual person, which I think they're the same thing, but we try to categorize things too much in this world. Mm. But so I got real into the sciences in school, and then into the, upper levels of schooling in college and so forth, and really got into psychology, the focus where I was going. And when I subsequently started working in the PhD program at the college that I was at, was on hypnosis and biofeedback. And so I quickly learned a lot of that, and it just became my jam. But I also was, able to put in some of this other stuff, to work with clients as we were, learning, interning, and all that, and realize that pretty early on, you have to separate those two things when you're in clinical. That wasn't done, so I just kind of decided to do my own thing, and just started on my own. And because I was very interested by that time in quantum physics, it helped to explain how everything, kind of the oneness of everything, of the universe, and how everything works. Um, I decided to call my modality, quantum transformation. So there's quantum hypnosis and quantum channeling and things like that. So you hear the word quantum a lot these days, but you didn't back when I was starting it. So people were always kind of curious about that. But anyway, fast forward, I work constantly now with clients who, most of them now seem to be ET contact or experiencers or abductees, if you will. But I work with everyone. I've always, done therapy work with your everyday people. What's funny is in the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, it seems to be funneling down where they could come to me wanting to stop smoking, and we go into hypnosis, go into quantum hypnosis to get them to find out the root cause and stop that, put their little suggestions in, and they always go to contact of some sort. Even and especially the people who aren't interested in it or don't even believe in it. And so what's interesting is I always record everything. Used to just do it with a voice recorder. Now, of course, I do it with video as well. And I have a double system just in case. But they're always floored when they come out and see themselves and hear themselves speaking about such things. And then also, once we're in there, I ask questions like, well, were you on a ship, or did you go to another planet or another dimension or whatever? And they come back sometimes with specific information, like, schematics for a machine, or new trailblazing thoughts in a science or whatever. And they have no education in this stuff. So they really are tapping into the infinite variety of connections to lives that we all have, which is why it's such fascinating work. So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell. The other thing is that a couple years ago, one of my clients, who was a very particularly resistant to hypnosis and those kind of things, but was suffering a lot, very afraid of ET contact that he had when he was a little kid. He didn't even know what it was. He just was afraid of a thing that happened. Took a couple years of working with him, but he eventually said, I want to do this. And he was a filmmaker. And that's how the film Alien Abduction Answers was born. It started out, he wanted to literally film live his session, but not just the way I do it, cinematically, just in case. And what came out of that, what was a 6.5-hour session, which I usually don't go that long with people, but it was so amazing, the stuff that was coming out of his experience. What came out of that was so amazing that we realized there was so much more. So we started using, with permission, of course, getting some of the other experiencers in who are my clients, and that film became an award-winning film and is very popular out there in the experiencer community. And I think it's helped a lot of people. So, and sadly, my friend John, who became one of my dearest friends, the filmmaker, passed away a couple months ago from pancreatic cancer. So he worked his purpose. He found out what his purpose was in that session. He really understood what it was. He went for it. He completed it, and then he left to do some other things. So,
well, I'm sorry to hear about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and I was going to add, you produced that
mhm.
movie, correct?
Yeah. He made me an associate producer because he didn't know anything about the subject. You know, he knows film, he knows filmmaking, and he knows acting. He was also an actor. But he knew that he had something really important there, and he wanted to be very genuine. And so he asked if I would help him make this movie, and my part was to, you know, provide all the information, the background information about the subject, to answer questions, to say that's really not where you should go with this, and to get the other experiencers in there. In fact, everybody in that film are my clients except for the great Whitley Strieber, who is our kind of our expert who agreed to come on and kind of bind everything together. It's a beautiful film.
Mhm. I have another quick question here.
Sure.
When the years that you have been doing your hypnotherapist, because I'm just curious, how many people have these how do I want to put it? These experiences with aliens, UFOs, things of that nature. How often is it really common, or is it?
Yeah, in fact, myself included, because I've had them since my earliest memories, even as a baby. And I have it, you know, almost daily, but or it's just part of my reality. But uh, like I said, almost to a person now, if we go deep enough, that stuff is there. I'm of a mind that we all have these encounters, but some people aren't ready to deal with them yet. Maybe this particular life, you know, is one where they're focusing on being a musician or a teacher or something. They don't have time to even fool with it. But I believe that we are all visited all the time. And I don't just lump it in there as ETs or Bigfoot or whatever. We're talking about consciousness. You know, again, I come at it from a quantum perspective where everything exists all the time, forever in one spot. And there is no separation except that we focus on one level of frequency and call that our reality. Like this life right now, this person is one life reality. But in reality, at least the theory is that we live infinite realities. We live all realities, and we're all part of the same reality. So it would make sense then that we all have these encounters, whether you want to call them ghosts or spirits or angels or fairies or ETs or, you know, whatever. Usually if I spend enough time with a person and we gain enough rapport and we go in deeply enough, we always find that there is something what you would call paranormal. And so it's actually normal.
Yes, and that's true.
Mhm.
And you know, I was just curious because I mean, when I was young, when I was a child, I had these reoccurring UFO type dreams, and I
Mm,
talked to other people, and they've had similar type of things, and that's why I
mhm.
was just very curious on how often you run into people that have these things.
Every day, every darn day. And you know, it's thankfully I am old now, and I have learned a lot with all the experiences I've had with these beautiful people, and they're all beautiful. But what I'm learning is you take people at face value and you listen to what they say because everybody wants to be heard. And I've even found that there are people who want to come in and kind of debunk what I do or make fun of it when they get here or whatever. But what's funny is by the time the session's over, they realize there's more to life than they thought too. And it always gets turned back into this stuff where they find themselves and or they start wanting to go deeper within themselves. So that's where the other stuff that I do comes in so handy, because I don't just give a person an experience and maybe they find some answers, but I also teach them how to do this themselves. I give them a lot of tools and techniques. They learn. In fact, my modality for the hypnosis is they have a lot of homework ahead of the session. They have to do some practices to get their vibrational frequency to a certain level, and their brainwave to at least theta and best theta gamma, so that they can tap into the quantum field. And then with intention, they can go wherever they want. And I don't front load it at all. I just say, we're going to go to the most appropriate experience that will give you information for whatever you came here for. And bam, they go. And it may be their childhood in this life. It might be, you know, they're a peasant in Renaissance or medieval times here on Earth. It might be that they're a rock person, you know, made out of rock on another planet. And it may be that they have no physical form at all and they're in some other dimension, but they're a very high level being with a lot of information for us. And that's really fun. So it's interesting. I've just learned, take them at face value, listen to them, let them say what they want. And if they agree to have the experience, then we just go freeform. And I say, you know, you're like a reporter. I'm sending you out to cover a story. So you're not going to feel pain. You know, if you're a war correspondent, you're not going to feel the pain of a grenade hitting around you or anything else. You'll report it, neutral observer. You'll narrate it for me. You'll tell me what the houses look like, what the people are like, if there are people, what you look like, who you are, what your part is here. And I'm kind of the host of the show or the editor, and I just start asking more questions so that you can discover more things. And it works really, really well. But there's a lot of healing if they need healing in that. And then I also, you know, am doing the energy work along with that. It's interesting because they leave the session with lifelong tools if they want them, you know, and most of them do by that time. They want to learn more about meditation. They want to learn more about, you know, breath work. They want to learn more about, you know, going inward, having self-discovery experiences. And they want more of what they thought they were afraid of if they came with fear. Always, it's just incredible because it gets turned around. They get to see it for what it really is.
Yes, that's very interesting. And I want to give a quick shout out here because I see Drew Banky's with us.
Oh, hi, Drew.
Susan Alloway, she's here with us. Dee Dee Jabral, she is here. So we got some good people here, and I can't scroll right now, so I don't know who all's here with us, but I thank them very much for being here on the show as well, asking questions. I know Drew, I think he was asking one about ayahuasca ceremony.
Oh yeah,
that you was on, and something about karate.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, what a lot of people don't know about me is I'm a national champion in a specific martial art called Kali. It's a Filipino martial art, and I don't compete anymore. I took a vow of non-harming back in 2001 after 9/11 happened, and that's a long story. But you know, that now distance past. But I love the martial arts, and I've always been an athlete. You know, marathoner, ultra marathoner, yogi. I was always a fitness professional, teaching fitness classes and a bodybuilder and all that. So I'm a very physical person. But yeah, the martial arts still have a beautiful place in my heart, and my husband and I both love them, but we don't really compete anymore. But we practice every once in a while around the house, and that's fun. But as far as the ayahuasca that Drew has brought up, Drew actually was the shaman, bless you, Drew, who gave me my first ayahuasca experiences, and very profound, very life altering for the better, and really helped me to put some things together that even I couldn't understand, even after all this time of seeing all this stuff. The oneness experience that I had in these journeys with Drew's guidance and his wife Ella, who was also facilitating. at one of our retreats up at Big Arden in Wisconsin, where we hold a lot of retreats, a lot of contact retreats of different sorts. I do that with my friend Melissa, and that was it's so fresh in my mind, and it was a couple years ago. It was just beyond anything I can describe, and very healing. The group that was with us, there were several people who had really serious things going on in their lives that, I don't want to break confidentiality, but some really serious things. And those experiences healed them or put them on their path to healing. And it was just, I can never thank Drew enough. And I can never recommend his work enough to anyone. So thanks, Drew.
I'm curious about this. With a person like you, did you confront some darkness in your ayahuasca experience, or did you find unrefined parts of the self?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's funny because when you do this work for so long, and you are a spiritual person, and you're very empathic like I am, and very compassionate, you kind of get a little, I don't want to say cocky about it, but you get used to the fact that you think you know what you know.
Yeah.
And you think, I'm saying you rhetorically, I thought I was a really good person, and that I, had polished off a lot of the rough edges, let's say, in this life and from other lifetimes. I've really done a lot of work on myself. That experience, especially the second night, I can't remember if we did 2 or 3 night ceremonies that time, but the second night, I faced the darkest inner demons I have ever faced. And I do a lot of paranormal work where I go into places and people want me to exorcise, entities and from their loved ones or from their homes or their buildings and all that stuff. Nothing came close to what I faced inside my own experience. And there was one part where, and I, I don't want to scare anyone off, but I will tell you, it is not for the weak at heart. It really isn't. It can be very rigorous. It can be very physically challenging. Like I said, I'm a hardcore athlete, and I have never done anything that physically challenging in my whole life. Some people purge a lot. I did, and some people don't at all. And some people just have this nice, twinkly lights and pretty colors and all that. I had some crazy stuff, but I realized it was all me. All that stuff was me. And because I don't have a fear of death, I could face it, but it was still freaking really scary. You just have to be brave. But what I found was once you can face those parts of yourself and embrace them, love them, forgive them, they morph, they change. And after I had that part of that experience, that's when I had that pinnacle experience of the oneness and the most beautiful. I'm almost going to cry. I'm trying not to cry. One of the most beautiful things I ever experienced in my life was going to this universe after. It was almost like I was ejected from that dark place into a world of color, and everything was breathing at the same, and moving and loving. It was just the purest love, and I will never forget it as long as I live. And I think that is worth anything. I think that's worth any experience that you go through before. So I highly recommend it, but do your research before you go.
It seems like such a vital function to discover those parts of the self. Like you need to do that. That seems like rudimentary. In the grand scheme of things, and yet like, how do you do that except through psychedelics? How do you bring those deep parts of the self out? Without. Are there other ways, to really tap into that? Like sometimes I wonder, like psychedelics are they more necessary, than we realize, I know they're definitely not for everyone, but
Right. Well, I think they can be they can cause an impact especially where people are good at hiding from themselves, like I was, because I thought I knew myself. And they also can be very healing for people, and they can be a fast track healing for people who have very hard problems. We look at Drew, especially works with veterans with severe PTSD, and talk about people with inner demons. It's ex-military, the veterans, and after they go through everything they go through to be of service, then they come home and they're just stuck with themselves, and they don't even understand why they feel the way they do or have the inner experiences they do. So that's one of his specialties. He works with these people, and he and Ella, and help them, and I bless their souls for it. But I don't think psychedelics are the only way. I truly believe deep meditation, deep self, inner work, working with the shadow self, working with a good therapist, you can still do that. And doing this quantum work like I do really has, people have kind of the same experiences. But it's not so terrifying because they're a neutral observer. But when they see something that is abhorrent and they realize it's them, then they have to deal with it. And that takes a skillful person to, that's why I think you should, be very choosy when you go to a person like this. It takes a skillful person to be able to guide you through that kind of experience and come out on the other side, well. But I believe all of us take the hero's journey. That's why we come to this particular construct. I think that's what third dimensional Earth life is as a human. Yeah. So, and it's not the only life. I just have to tell people it is not the only life. And so don't freak out if you're not having what I like to call a vacation life. If you're having hardship and all that, just know this is a tiny speck. It's one pixel in a giant mega jumbotron of a picture of reality. It's all important. We don't want to, diminish that, but it's also, if I take it from a clinical stance, it's a psychodrama. We come here, we put on costumes, we play parts, we get really into our parts. Sometimes we forget we're in a psychodrama or a play. And then once we're out of it, we're like, oh man, wasn't that a trip, But again, not to diminish anyone's experience. It can be very, very tough. It can also be very joyful, which is what I try to do, is to try to turn people's attention around, to find the beauty, to find the joy, to find the love, and to be the beauty, the joy, and the love. I think that's super important. So,
and maybe also to help them find out that maybe 90% of that suffering, is all thoughts, and mental activity, surprisingly, people would never expect, but I actually think that when you really start to, examine your mind, you realize that you're all of those experiences, all of those negative experiences that you feel constitute your suffering, your own mind is meeting those out. Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Jim. I mean, we are our worst enemies, aren't we? And thought, that's the thing that we have to train our minds. And that's why I believe in the disciplines. I love the discipline of meditation, of yoga, of qigong, of whatever. You choose your thing. My husband's a musician. His discipline is practicing and performing and pushing himself farther and further. Or an artist or a bricklayer. everybody should have some disciplines in their lives to help bring them back to square one, because you can let those thoughts take over, and then you start ruminating and they expand, and pretty soon you don't realize they're thoughts. They're your reality. You know, your thoughts create your reality. I hate to sound so cliche, but you're absolutely right. So especially meditation of some form, and there are infinite forms. You don't have to do the type that you read about in books or see on the shows all the time. There are many, many types, and I try to teach people the types that are beneficial for them, that are most pleasing to them, or that they'll at least do for a while so that they get hooked on it. But meditation is the way to do what I call train the puppy. You know,
Yeah.
the mind, the ego personality is it's a rambunctious puppy. It wants to go all over the place, and it's fun and it's cute, but after a while it's still going all over the place, and it's nipping at your heels, and it's chewing up the carpet and all that. If you're not responsible as the caregiver to that puppy, it's just going to become a wild animal, and with no structure, and probably hurt itself. It'll run out in front of a car if you don't train it to come when you call. So meditation is, and I think meditation and breath work especially go really hand in hand. The breath work is something, or some form of kriya, as we yogis call it, some sort of patternistic routine thing that you do over and over and over again to wear the puppy out a little bit, train it to focus. You wear it out a little bit. Once it's tired, you put it in its crate, give it its little dish of water, its little toys, cover the crate up, turn the light off, walk out of the room, and it goes to sleep for a while. Then you can do the real stuff that you're doing in your life. That's how I view that kind of work. Your puppy is your mind, and if you don't train it and give it something to do that is repetitious and kind of boring, and that wears it out a little bit, then you'll never get past it to the good stuff. But if you can quiet that down and kind of tone down that volume a little bit, the universe is your oyster. I mean, you can tap into the quantum field, and that's what this work is about.
Well, yeah, because if you have negative thoughts all the time and you stay there, that's what's going to happen. You're going to be completely negative of everything. And it's just a change of your thought perceptions, and it really makes a difference. It really does.
Yeah.
I was stuck in a rut for, quite some time. I'd say it was 3 years, 4 years. And I just one day was like, hey, you know what? I couldn't change any of that if I wanted to. I couldn't change anything. So I have to move on from it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to heal, if I'm going to fix myself, I have to move on. So yes, the thoughts are so very important, and they are powerful, extremely powerful.
They're the most powerful things. And so, change your thoughts, change your mind, change your world. People, I know so many beautiful, good people who are absolutely freaked out right now because of the way the world is. And they're like, I just want to give up because the world just, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, well, it isn't. But you're focusing on what's getting worse and worse and worse. So that's all you're perceiving, because you're in that vibrational frequency. You're tuned to that radio station. So that's what's coming in. And that's what you think is all that exists, or for the most part. So I try to teach people tools and techniques to give themselves to first become conscious of the fact that you're going there again into rumination, or letting yourself be cooled down by the pain of the world or the pain of your life or whatever. But once you catch yourself, then you give yourself a pattern interrupt. And that's all it takes. It's like flipping a switch. And so early on in the session, teach people how to program themselves to flip that switch off and on. And the more you practice this little practice, the more powerful it becomes. And it's a wild card. You can use it for anything. But the first step is remembering to be conscious of how you're feeling. So if you can't be conscious, at least start to listen to what you're saying. I've told people often just carry around a voice recorder or on your phone, tap in the voice recorder app and just let it roll for a couple of hours during your regular day, especially like at work, and hear what you say. Or when you're driving your car, just set it on the seat, turn it on, record yourself while you're driving your car. Because some people really go there when they're driving. They get, upset with everybody paying attention and all that. Once you become conscious of the fact that you are viewing the world in such a negative light, then the battle's half won, because you can start to realize, oops, I'm noticing everything's bad again. Immediately start looking for a few things that are good, and they're everywhere. You just, I don't know what it is about the human mind, but it's more attracted to the spectacular, the painful, the excitement, I guess, of that. There's an itch that happens, to people when something is going wrong. And I think it's a survival mechanism that's left over from when we were very new as humans. The ego personality actually is your body card, and it says, hey, if you hear a growl up there to the left of you on the mountain, that's probably a tiger getting ready to jump on you, so run or hide. That's its purpose. But after a while, it tells you every sound is a growl, so you better be on level 11 of conscious awareness about danger all the time. We're not built to have that kind of chronic stress. And so that starts to break down not just our bodies physically, that's why we get sick so much or injured, but it breaks us down psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. It keeps us pulled down in what I call the tar pit of negativity. And it's really sticky. It's hard. Sometimes you feel like you have cement boots on, right? But there are ways to lift your spirits really quickly, even a notch or two. And once you do, the world starts to look a little better. And if you start to notice that and be grateful for that and love that and acknowledge that to other people and start to be that to other people, then you start to tune into those higher level radio stations, if you will, and your reality is different. And I think that's how you change the world.
Now, Debz, I got to stop you just for 1 second. I'm having some bleed through with audio.
Oh, no.
It's on your end. It kind of sounds like a radio station trying to come through you.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I don't know why, but my audio system does not play well sometimes with StreamYard. So let me change microphones real quick.
Absolutely.
Let's see. This one's... I may have to change.
Well, Jim, I think she'll get it here in just a minute. We can't hear you, Debz.
Maybe then we'll go into we'll shift gears here and go into maybe the contact experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd like to kind of delve into that.
Yeah, we'll go back.
Maybe starting with
how's this?
Perfect. That's good. Sounds good.
That sounds a lot better. Thank you, Debz.
Rule number 1, always have a backup.
Yes. Old Ronnie Heelan down here said, good old Mercury retrograde.
I have some really challenging Mercury aspects in my natal chart. So every time it comes around, I'm like, please have mercy. But it still kicks my butt.
So now, Debz, take us back to the very beginnings, because you have had experiences with those beyond. And I am very curious on how you got how old was you when you had these was you a contactee, or was you a abductee? I hate to say abductee, but
Yeah. No,
was
that's
you was is that what you were? Even both?
both. I don't like the word abductee either. In fact, I fought tooth, fang, and claw to change the title of the film, but there was a method to that madness. John was a brilliant person, and he said, look, if we call it, My Exciting Life with the ETs, well, we're just only going to get people who we're preaching to the choir to watch the movie. But if you put alien abduction in the title, that's going to get all those people who've been, living, believing the things that Hollywood and the government and so forth, or their neighbors have taught them. And lo and behold, it has had that effect. But just for a common vocabulary, I call abduction, going to a ship or another environment, at the behest of whatever beings are coming. And often we think we're doing it not volitionally. But what I've found in my work is it's always voluntarily. And it's usually because these beings are our relatives, our teachers, our, whatever guides, or, they are scientists and somehow we have a soul contract to each other to allow them to study us. I don't have a pat answer for it. But to answer your question, contactee, experiencer, abductee from earliest birth. My earliest conscious memory, I was 2.5, 3 years old, and I was born in California, Southern California. So we lived in this cute little bungalow, and my bedroom had a glass wall looking into the backyard to my favorite tree. It was right there by that. And my mom had put me to bed. She was very pregnant with probably her third child by then, and a tired mommy. And I think my dad was working his second job of the day. So, she was tired. He was away, I think. And I had just started to go to sleep, and I heard tap, tap, tap on the glass wall on the window. And I looked out the window as this little toddler. And what I saw, I can still see it in my head, but what I thought I saw were a group of monkeys in my tree with unusual faces, big black eyes, and big heads, spindly little bodies. And they were saying, come out and play with us. But I didn't hear any voices. Now, at that age, I'm pretty sure I did not know what space was or anything about it. And I doubt that I had ever seen a live monkey. I don't think I'd been to the zoo yet. I might have seen a picture of a monkey in an encyclopedia or something. But what I told my mom, I said, I have to go tell my mommy first, again, good little child, before I can come out. And I ran and woke up my mom, and I said, Mommy, the space monkeys want me to come out and play in the backyard. And I go outside. And, woke her from a dead sleep. And she's like, I think you're dreaming, honey. Let's go back to bed. And she looked out, like the dutiful mom, didn't see anything in the tree, put me back to bed, told me to go to sleep, kissed me goodnight, turned the light off. And as soon as, 5 minutes went by, tap, tap, tap. So this happened several times in a row. They kept being more and more insistent and more charming. I wanted to go out there. And play with those space monkeys. But after about the third or fourth time, she being so tired and, just weary, she got a little angry, and she said, I want you to go to bed. I want you to go to sleep. I don't ever want to hear about the space monkeys again. Not a peep, or you're going to get spanked. And that terrified me. So, I think I stayed up all night and just was conversing with them through the window, but they wanted me to come out there. And that was my first memory. And then after that, there were all sorts of beings and all sorts of adventures. I literally had another family living in an overlay of my family life in that house. And they all had names. They had very specific, again, folks thought I was just an intelligent, creative child, but I talked about my other family all the time, and they didn't, nobody in my birth family saw them. And I could never figure that out. So, there were many very impactful experiences though, but fast forward to when I was 9, we moved from California to Georgia because my dad was in the military, and eventually got out and became a civilian, worked for the Justice Department, but we moved a lot. So we went to Georgia. We went from, being in like a little yard in a huge city next to LA, to this spacious place in Georgia where there's like 60 miles of pine forest behind our house. Lived in a new house. So we were on the edge of this town right by Warner Robins Air Force Base. And I remember my brother, who was just a year younger than I, waking me up out of a dead sleep one night and saying, because we played in the woods all the time. We loved it. By that time, Mom had 4 kids and a foster baby. So we kind of ran wild, those 2 of us in the woods once we moved there. But he woke me up and he said, the woods is on fire. We got to go out there and take care of it. And I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but we did. We got our clothes on. We ran out, snuck out of the house, ran into the forest, and you could see it was just this huge red, yellow glow. And we got to the kind of meadow that was in the middle of where the forest was that we played in, where our fort was. And there was a huge craft hovering over that meadow. And
like how huge? Like a regular sort of dish-shaped craft, or like mothership huge? Like,
well, here's how put on your tinfoil hat now.
mm-hmm.
Remember the big mothership at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind? It was that.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Wow.
was a decade and a half earlier than that movie. At least, maybe 20 years. No, it was a decade and a half, about 15 years.
So were you like just astonished, or what was your level of reaction?
In awe. We were in awe, and there was music. I remember music, all of those lights. If you can remember what that mothership looked like, that's what it looked like. And the other thing is that there was an energy. It felt like the best day you ever had at Disneyland energy. It was just electric, and we were excited, but we were just kind of in awe looking up at this thing. And then I noticed that there were stuff on the ground, like pine cones, pine needles, acorn shell stuff, rocks in the air, suspended in the air around us, and I don't know, maybe the electromagnetic field of that ship or whatever. But at the time, I didn't remember anything else other than that. And then waking up the next morning and my brother shaking me awake again, saying, we have to hide our clothes because our clothes had gotten wet and muddy. And we can't ever tell anybody about this because we'll get in trouble because we snuck out of the house. Not we're going to get in trouble because we saw whatever that was that we saw, but we were afraid, our parents would get mad. So we never spoke about it again. And then, fast forward, and I go to the opening premiere night of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and we get to that end scene, and my jaw just dropped. And I thought, how did Steven Spielberg, how did he know what I saw when I was a kid? How? Mm. And that really started me. I was always a believer and always an experiencer, but then I started putting 2 and 2 together, like other people have had the same experiences as I have had. And that really put me on a quest to find out more. And then, of course, a little bit later, Whitley Strieber wrote Communion, he described a whole lot of things that I had, and it was just, it was a build-up thing. So I just
And
thought
yeah,
that was interesting.
and then you got a regression later on, right?
Okay.
And got more details of that. And that
Yes.
was also an incident where you had missing time, and it was like an unusually large quantity of missing time, like the whole night,
Hmm.
which is really atypical for missing time, because normally missing time is, 1 to 2 hours,
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so could you give us
A
the
little more detail. Yeah.
the detail of
So
what you learned in the
yeah,
regression?
I didn't have that regression till about 10 years ago. And that was interesting. I always
Mhm.
wanted to know, and here's the thing, I'm really good at self-hypnosis too. I've had 2 kids without any drug intervention or anything, fast labors, very, gentle, beautiful, hippie kind of birthing experiences, and had my wisdom teeth pulled, had a hand surgery with no anesthesia, all this stuff. In fact, I just had a hip surgery last year with no anesthesia. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was awake, and they just, made sure. I did have an epidural, but I was awake for it. So anyway, back to this. I wanted to know, especially because of Whitley's books. He always talked about the secret school with children being abducted and taken to these ships or these other environments and shown screens. And so I'm like, I wonder if that's what happened. So we did the regression, and sure enough, um, we were taken up into that ship, shown screens, and basically, I can't speak for my brother, but basically, I was given the purpose of being an activist for the earth and for humanity, an eco-activist. I, from very early on, was very, very worried about the planet and what we were doing to the planet. And so it started making sense, because they were teaching us, if you don't take responsibility and start doing things, this planet is going to it's going to discorporate, and the humanity is going to discorporate well before the planet. The planet might go on eventually, but you're ruining the planet, you're ruining each other. We want to work with you more, but until you can get to a certain level, we can't do anything more. And especially nuclear missiles, we were going through the Cuban Missile Crisis at that time. All of these irresponsible things that we were doing, they were teaching us. And so, but I could remember in great detail what that looked like. Even as big as that ship was, when we were in there, it was a city, it was an environment as big as LA. It went on forever and ever and ever, but it was pristine, and it was beautiful, and the people were beautiful. And um,
Were there natural trees or any kind of foliage or any kind of, or was it just metal, or the city, inside the ship? I'm
yeah,
just curious, like what visually,
what I
what?
can remember, and I can go back in now and look at it. There was some foliage, and I don't know if that was for our
Mhm.
benefit, so we wouldn't feel so alienated. But for the most part, the inner workings of the main space that we were in, where we saw the screens and we met with our friends, if you will, our teachers, it was mostly crystal. And this is so
Mm.
hard to put into words, but I want to say it was liquid crystal, because like it would sit down on something that looked like like a bench made of crystal, but it was soft, and it was warm, and it would encase, like it would like envelop, like somebody holding a child on their lap, and if I touched something, it would respond. It was conscious. The whole environment was conscious, not just the beings who were in there. And in subsequent times of traveling to different craft and so forth, I've always found the craft to be a consciousness. So
What's the necessity? Why is that the case? I've just recently come to the understanding, or the hypothesis, really, that consciousness has within it, just inherent capacities of interdimensionality, and that is maybe why these crafts are conscious, because it's to go interdimensional, you need to utilize consciousness, and the ship needs to essentially be a conscious entity in its own right to be able to do that.
Right.
I mean, is that, do you think that's largely the reason why?
I'm very sure it's part of the reason. I mean, look, we're using training reels right now for the same thing in our culture. The internet itself is this close to getting us to where all of us are able to interact instantaneously with each other. All we have to do is get rid of the machinery, and we're going there. We're moving there fast. This thing right here, this phone, I can talk to my phone and ask it for information, and it gives it to me in a voice, and it pairs with the things that I put in my ears so that I can hear and talk. So literally what I think is these beings pair with these, I don't even want to call them vehicles. They're just larger forms of consciousness, so that they can travel together as a component, or not a component, a set of components that are coherent. So once I asked the beings that I channel the most, anybody comes through if they want to, depending on what's going on, what the purpose is. But the main group that I channel, like when I do group sessions and things like that, they're called, I asked for a name because they said they're too evolved to have a label. They don't have egos anymore. But they said you can call us the star teachers or the teachers. So these star teachers say, one day I asked them, because people kept asking, what is the propulsion system? How do you do this? How do you travel at superluminal speeds, for instance, across great distances? Number one, they say there is no distance. It's all here in this spot, and you just choose the frequency. Number two, we travel at the speed of consciousness, fueled by love. That was the answer. So it's not, and then they went back and said, however, for people who are not at the level where you are understanding what we're saying, they will perhaps see a ship that literally has like an anti-gravity propulsion system, or a 0-point energy system, or it's made out of a special metal that we have invented, and all this. It depends on where you are as to what you're given as the understanding of how it all works. And so again, I don't tell people, no, you're wrong, you nuts and bolts people, you're wrong. It doesn't have a propulsion system like that. If that's where the level is that they are perceiving it or wanting to perceive it, that's what they're going to perceive. And then they'll work their way up. And I'm sure I will work my way up in a greater understanding as well. But I think you're absolutely right. Consciousness makes it happen.
Mm-hmm. So what about this? Going back to this Georgia experience of the mothership, what about the beings themselves? Do you have any recollection of who they were, what they looked like?
Very much so. Very much so. They look like what I would describe, or what I've heard other people describe as the tall grays, who are, the smaller ones. I've encountered some who were kind of cold and non-emotional and robotic, but those little ones that I first encountered when I was a little kid were charming and fun and cute and had emotions. But these taller ones.
Now, when you say taller, because the normal short ones are like what, 3 to 4
feet tall. Height. Yeah.
And then I'm not exactly sure. Normally in abduction experiences, there's like what abductees refer to as the leader.
Mm-hmm.
who's taller, but not really that much tall. Maybe only like 4.5, 5 feet maximum, they say.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? The leader, or taller than that? Like this is something different.
This is something different.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, now that I'm trying to put it into words, what I remember seeing in the regression of what I perceived when I was a child is they were tall, like, you know, 6, 7 feet tall, long of limb, bipedal, humanoid looking, but, and I don't even want to call them gray. They didn't have the same kind of skin that we had, and they didn't have uniforms, but they weren't naked. It was like, again, they were paired with their clothing, you know, so it was just another form on their body. And there was no verbalization. It was all and I say empathic instead of telepathic, because you feel what they're feeling when they communicate.
That's probably right. I've never heard anyone say that before. It probably is both telepathic and empathic, you know,
It
because
is.
there's such an emotional meaning being conveyed as well, you know, that's not, you know, a verbal, you know, language.
It's a true merging. It really is. And
That's
so,
really interesting, yeah.
and I think that's why, you know, not to get too far off track, but, you know, Ray Hernandez and the Free Association have put out giant books, like 3 volumes of taking experiencers, answering these huge questionnaires and then writing out their experiences. And they put all this data into these books. They compiled it all. And I can't remember the number, but it's pretty astronomical, like 80% of all experiencers, even those who had what they considered were scary experiences, say that they don't ever want them to stop because they feel so connected to these beings. So this is really incredible. But to get back to what they look like, yeah, they didn't have a lot of facial features, tiny nose, slit for a mouth, but big eyes.
Black eyes, wrap around almond eyes, like
Yes.
gray.
When the ones that I remember when I was a kid. Now, fast forward to 20 years ago or so, 15, 20 years ago, when these star teachers started coming through physically, like the first time I literally experienced them, I know now that I've interacted with them my whole life, but consciously remember having them. They came into an energy healing session that I was having, like a in-person healing session, and I was working with this woman who was terminally ill, who didn't believe in any of this, and it was her last straw because her sister bought her a gift certificate. You know, basically she was sent home to die, and so she's like, "What do I have to lose?" We're in the session, and you know, got her really deep. I was really deep. I pair with my clients, by the way, so there's that experience too. Suddenly, the ceiling opens up in the office, and that big ship is up there.
The same ship.
Same
The
type,
same
or the same type.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly there are 4 or 5, I think there were 5, about 7 foot tall, these kind of beings in the room, standing around the table, the massage table that she was on. I don't do massage, but I used to make them comfortable on a massage table if they were very ill, you know, with soft blankets and so forth. But the difference in these they were shaped the same. They felt the same, or maybe even higher, but they were this
translucent chrome,
kind of chrome black, absolutely see-through or translucent.
Mm-hmm. That's really
no features at all, except instead of seeing, you know, like those clear anatomy people that we used to have when we were kids in science class, instead of seeing veins and arteries and organs, I saw universes, galaxies, streams of nebulae going through them. And yet there was so much expression coming from them, and so much tenderness and so much information. And they literally helped me in this session. Like one even came behind me and slipped my body on and started moving my hands. And do it. I was literally being taught more modalities for healing. And it was so beautiful. And then eventually the session was over. They just kind of filtered away and the ceiling closed up and it was over and it was back to this reality. And so at the end of the session, I do what I always do. I always offer water. I give a blessing and then had her sit up and before I say anything, but I'm, furiously taking notes. So thank goodness I did, because I was writing this down in different instances, but I always have them say what they experienced first. And so I sat her up and I said, "How are you feeling?" And she said, "I feel perfect." And I said, "Oh, that's good. I'm so glad," because she was in a lot of pain and she was sick. And I said, "That's great that you have some relief." And she said, "No, you don't understand. I am perfect. There's nothing wrong with me." And I was kind of taken aback. And I said, "Well, why do you say that? Can you tell me more?" And she started describing everything that I experienced in the session to a T. And then I showed her my notes and we both were just like, I was just gobsmacked. And she said, I'm healed. And sure enough, a couple of weeks later, she went back for, to check in, or a week later to her oncologist or whatever. And she didn't have the cancer anymore.
And it was terminal cancer.
It was so bad that they couldn't do anything else for her. So that was just her path, right? It didn't happen for my bestie, John, just a couple of months ago. He succumbed to it, but that was his, and he's told me, by the way, he talks to me. We are still working together. He gave me a couple of days off to, kind of deal with my emotions. And he's like, "Okay, time to get back on the horse, because the mission's still going and you've got work to do. You're here and I'm here." So, but he said I fulfilled my duty there. And now I'm free to continue the work from a broader spectrum of reality.
So that was just his planned exit point,
plan.
really, yeah.
Yeah. But till the day he passed, his human self, his human ego was saying, "I don't want to go. I want to stay here. I have work to do. I have my beautiful wife. I have my beautiful children, my grandchildren. I have my friends. I don't want to go. I have a purpose." Till the day he died. And then as soon as he passed, he's like, "Oh, hello. This is my purpose." So I cling to that, because now I've had 2 NDEs too. I've had 2 near-death experiences. So that's why I'm not afraid of death. I know it doesn't exist. It's just you just change channels. You're on another reality. But to hear it from my good friend so soon after he had suffered so badly, saying, "Life is grand. Love it. Love everybody. Love yourself. Enjoy every moment. Squeeze all the juice out of it. But when you leave there, it's so much better. You're just going to be so elated," and that's his main message.
So, Debz, let me ask you this question, because I know you've been doing this for a long time. Now, you said there was 2 things about these aliens, empathy, and you had mentioned something else.
Telepathy and empathy. So I call it telepathy.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, and I'm not going to take a lot of time on this. Now, Jim knows this story. When I was younger, I had an experience where I went to sleep. It was nighttime. I went to sleep, and throughout the night, I had these really crazy dreams where something, I don't know what, was talking to me. And because it was so long ago, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to really tap into my mind to see what they were talking about. But every time they'd say my name in that dream, I would tense up, like I couldn't even move, like I was paralyzed. And and it happened every time. I want to say it's like, if your mom or dad's yelling at you because you didn't do something correctly, you kind of get
You
scared.
react. Your body reacts. Yeah.
So every time this, what have you, said my name, I would tense up. I couldn't move. It was almost like it was holding me there, and it started talking. And then, of course, I would loosen up. But then when it had something else to say, I would go right back. Tell me just quickly, and I know you don't have a lot of time in what really happened, but can you maybe shed some light on that?
Yeah, well, everybody's experience is unique, but there are some stereotypical things that happen to most people. And, what people call sleep paralysis or paralysis during these events is a very common thing. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe what you just explained about, when your parent or a teacher calls you by your full name, you're going to tense up because a spanking's about to happen, or punishment. When something or someone is so alien to you in your regular life and they speak your name, we've been taught to fear, number one, the unknown, or something that is very different from us, because that might be dangerous. And then further taught as kind of an underlying message, if they know your personal information, you better look out. I mean, look at how we act nowadays. Somebody calls you on the phone, you don't recognize the number, and they say, hey, Todd, how you doing? And immediately you tense up because you either think, oh my God, it's a customer service person, or it's a salesperson, or it's the tax collector, or it's never, oh, who's this? How cool. Somebody knows my name that I don't recognize the voice. Do you? And you never do. So I think that's kind of what you experience. The body itself is enmeshed through quantum entanglement with the software that runs the onboard operating system of this spacesuit, and that's the ego personality. Again, it's your security guard. And so the body responds with tightening, tension, and it just fear. It can't move. Most sentient beings on the planet tense up when they're scared. Their bodies do it as a reaction. I don't believe, and I could be wrong because, I'm not infallible, and there are infinite realities out there and infinite, things that could happen. But I don't think for the most part, you are induced into paralysis in the interaction. I think it is a reaction from the body itself.
And could it have to do with, maybe a little bit of an ontological shock happening, because suddenly you're encountering something that's outside the spectrum of what you thought was possible, all of a sudden, your reality shatters in a sense, because you didn't think that could happen. It's happening. Maybe there's a kind of just physiological reaction,
Yeah.
that would accompany,
I think so. I think we're put on pause because the body doesn't know yet, and the mind doesn't know yet. It's searching quickly for how to respond. What happens next? If you've ever been attacked by someone, time slows down, and you start to think in that stretched out amount of time. Well, if they do this, I'm going to have to do this, and so forth. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but as a martial artist, I can tell you, 3 minutes in a competition ring, in a full contact kind of situation, 3 minutes seems like an hour. It's stretched out, and it's almost like expanding the content so you can look at it piece by piece by piece. And because of that, the body is moving slower. So the other thing I might want to bring up too is that because these beings are, for the most part, I believe, from a higher level quantum frequency, they are literally moving faster. And we are in third dimensional physical earth life, which is, it has to by default, to be physical, our molecules, our structure, our atoms have to be moving very slowly so that you can perceive a physicality, so that there's cohesion of these particles. But I believe that they move so fast that you are perceiving yourself as being paralyzed and still. Does that make sense?
It does. And, it's just, like I said, I don't know what language they were speaking or anything like that. But I know when it did say my name, it was just like a flash of white light and I was tensed up. I could not even move. And, I thank you very much for your inputs on that too, because I have no idea. And I really didn't even really think about it much. I kind of pushed it to the back. And then I met Jim and, we talk quite often. And, he started bringing it out, hey, what did you experience and things like that. But we don't, our experience isn't like yours where you've spent your lifetime with psychology and quantum stuff. And that's why I was just curious on what your quick take was on that.
Yeah, and I could be completely wrong in your case. Everybody's different. Everybody's case is unique, and every experience for every person is unique. So I want to put that out there humbly. I don't know doo-doo about anything. I'm the first to admit it. But I can make some good assumptions based on the vast amount of data that I've compiled over the decades and in this life. To make some good assumptions, but the highest level scientists on our planet do that, and we believe that that they've got a description of how something works, and then 10 years later somebody proves that's wrong too. So I think we're always ever evolving. All of life is. And as you move along, Todd, you're probably going to find that you have a greater understanding of that, or you may go back and find that that wasn't exactly what happened in the first place, which is what happened in John's case in the movie. If you ever watched the movie, his experience, he completely thought he saw and experienced something completely differently than what really happened. When we go in and look at it clearly with no lenses attached, it can be quite different. So
yeah, very interesting. And Jim, I didn't mean to cut you off
No,
to
sorry.
do this. I was just so very curious on what she thought, because I think that it was definitely something somewhere trying to communicate, and I don't believe it would have been paranormal. I've been researching ghosts and hauntings, things like that, for 30 years, so I'm well versed in that whole aspect. But the UFOs and aliens, I really started coming out of my shell when I met Jim. So I just find it fascinating, and I can't explain it.
I can't either. And there's such a bleed through and a blur between all of them now. I mean, I like these retreats I was talking to you about. We go up to this really remote location, but a beautiful retreat center with cabins and all kinds of great stuff in northern Wisconsin. It's not the only place to go, but the thing I'm going to tell you next happens there. So surrounded by these beautiful forests, this kind of big meadow where we all go and we initiate contact and do this skywatch stuff at night. And boy, do we it's a huge hotspot. We have phenomenal contact. But over the years, I would be called by something during the breaks throughout the night, because you're out there for like 6 hours in the middle of the night, and so we want to take comfort breaks and whatever. but we take larger breaks, and I've been called to go walk out in the woods in the dark and see what's out there. You know, it's not just lights in the sky. I mean, we see stuff on the ground. We have interactions with people, all kinds of stuff. So after a while, people wanted to come with me, you know, so a small group of the larger group would come. We'd go out in the woods. And sure enough, about 3 years ago, we started having what people would call Bigfoot or Sasquatch encounters. And what we found is, number one, they like to be called the Janu. They say that's their real name. And they are not from this earth. They are another species that is interdimensional. And that's why you can't ever find them, you know, when you want to. You can see the tracks, but they take this shape and this form because it suits them to do what they're doing. They're kind of guardians or, you know, benefactors of the forest, of the land, of the earth.
And, you know, I've always thought that with cryptids, that they would be interdimensional because, I mean, fear is the human's number one thing. People are afraid of everything. But if you're walking through the woods and you're hiking a long distance and all of a sudden you see something and boom, it disappears, you're left to your own going, did I really just see that?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So that it's not something super scary.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's kind of like not cloaking, but it's interdimensional and it's moving so that you're not aware.
It's popping through, and I think that's what I know. That's what people are calling ghosts. Ghosts are just it's a bleed through from one dimension to another, or one frequency to another. And here's what I found in my work with them is that you do not perceive them unless you have a resonant frequency, a vibrational state that is similar to theirs, meaning you have something going on in your life that is markedly the same as it is something that is in relationship to them that's going on in their life. And in fact, I've seen what one would call ghosts. When we see each other, they freak out and pop out. And I just imagine, well, are they seeing me as a bleed through and I'm freaking them out? You know, am I the ghost? And so I truly believe we are all interdimensional, but in this spacesuit contraption that we're walking around in this environment, most of us don't realize that we still have that capability, you know. And so again, those practices really do help. I teach people how to do out-of-body experiences and that kind of thing. And so it can be done, but you have to like unplug yourself from all the things that keep you attached to this body and this reality. So anyway, but yeah.
You know, it's strange that you said about how ghosts are, because, and I'm sure you're familiar with EVPs, electronic voice.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And I remember specifically, I think I was with my wife-like person, Ronnie, and we was doing an EVP, and on that EVP, I believe it said, this would have been the most recent. It said, we are the seekers. I believe it said we are the seekers or the searchers.
Wow.
And I'm like, me and her was like, oh my God, what the heck? And then before that, sometime before that, I was doing an EVP session. I had asked a question and I didn't get the result I was looking for. I got, are you real?
Yes.
So could that be
That's interesting.
in that
a juxtaposition? Yeah.
Could it been, hey, they're asking the same questions that we asked of them. Are you real?
I
mean,
totally
how
believe
crazy
it. Like, we could be the ETs to other people.
That's
And
a real twist. Wow. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so again, that behooves us to be the best. And that's the main message for me to people is just be the best person you can be consciously
Mhm.
as often as you can. Stay in a high vibrational state. Be loving, be kind, be compassionate, be forgiving, be grateful. Take care of each other. Take care of strangers, even if you can. You don't have to go out there and be, the person who changes everything in the world politically. Maybe there are people who try to do that, and bless their souls for that. But start here at the bullseye and work your way out. Be the best person you can be to yourself, then be the best person you can be to your family, to your friends, to your neighbors, to your community. And you don't have to put so many restrictions on things. Just be good, and your frequency will be higher and higher. And I do believe that the higher frequency you are, i.e. those emotional states that make you feel good, that's the clue of what frequency you're in. Or you could look at the Kardashev consciousness scale. That will tell you where you are. If you ever look that up, it's really cool. You might Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about. But it talks about the levels of consciousness compared to our emotional states. And it's very revealing. So, fear being like down here, and anger and violence and all of that, and love and altruism and joy way high up. Whatever frequency you are sustaining in any given moment or stretch of time, if you want to call it time, that is what you're going to be experiencing, both physically and non-physically. So that's why I tell people, a lot of people want to come and do, CE5 with me, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, human initiated contact. When we go out in the field here locally, I've done that kind of work long before Dr. Stephen Greer called it something. We started out calling it, looking at the stars, and then sky watch, and then, UFO hunting, and all along. It doesn't matter what you're calling it, but people want to do this. They're curious, but then they say, but I have this fear of, what if bad aliens come, or what if it's the deep state operations, the secret space program or the MILABs or whatever, read my consciousness and they show up. I'm terrified of getting in that situation. I'm like, then that's what you're going to perceive, So if you don't want to have a negative adventure, unless you're here to experience negative adventures, then go for it. Take that big roller coaster ride. But if you want some pleasant experience or something that will give you even more awe or curiosity or whatever to keep going, then sustain a very high level frequency state, vibrational state. So that's the work that I do in groups when we go out to do this work. Is we do breath work. Sometimes we do chanting. We might dance. We do stuff to foster heart coherence in the circle. We get in a circle out in the field, and so we are like one entity, feeling really good. We play high level music, or we sing, or whatever, to get ourselves all coherent in the heart. And then we say, okay, show us something. And by golly, it happens. And usually it's phenomenal. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Never, ever had a negative experience in all the years, all the decades of doing this work with groups. But we have had contact every time.
That's interesting.
100% of the time.
100%
Yeah.
of it.
Wow.
Always. Yeah.
And,
But
and
you have to
basically,
kind of-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Debs, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you have to agree to release your default mode network for a while and just go along with the flow of what everybody else is doing. If you have good leadership and you have good, and I don't want to call it leadership, if you have a good coordinator who can kind of guide people into that cohesive frequency state, you're going to have a good experience. So go ahead. I didn't mean to just take over. But.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was gonna say, is this the CE5 method? Is that something that can be done by yourself? I would imagine it would work better with more people because you are concentrating each other into one. So
Yeah, I say yes and yes, because, I didn't know anything about, I do teach some of Greer's protocols. I think they're good. They're handy. They're an easy kind of primer for people who've maybe never meditated or done group work before. And he has a lot of great information, about how to do that. But, I was a 2-year-old when I first remember having contact, and I didn't know anything about it. But I was a joyful little kid, and so I had a joyful little experience. But that doesn't mean that the little kids who have scary experiences aren't loving and joyful and high frequency either. It also just means that their environment and indoctrination, maybe from their families or again, television. All of us who are alive right now were born after television, or television was in our lives. So we've had a lot of media indoctrination that kind of overrides that at first. But if you stick with it, the fear goes away and you have a really good experience. But everybody's unique. So
now in your experiences, did you go to like different, how do I want to say it, different worlds or planets or colonies or however you want to put that? And when you did, how many different species of these beings have you encountered? Like what kinds? I know that you mentioned grays.
Yeah.
Did you ever come across reptilians or?
Yeah.
Please tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends who and great guides who would be, labeled reptilians. And they're healers and they're guardians. Like they're like bodyguards almost. They look big and rough and tough, but they're really kind. They do healing work. They're gentle, really.
These are humans you're talking about, right? These are humans or no?
Reptilians.
I thought you were talking about humans with reptilian souls, because I know there's a lot of people that
there can be. And again, depending on, you gauge where their vibrational state is. Once you become really, tuned in, like you guys are, I'm sure, can read people's energy and know that person is a depressed person or that person is a really angry person. Watch yourself around that and don't get drawn into it, because they're going to, expressed in that way. And what you were saying, Jim, a reptilian soul, what we would label dangerous or controlling or warlike, that's kind of the image that we've been sold about them by people who either want to control other people or who have been at that low level and experienced them on that level. I have another guide who's like, oh my gosh, probably 10 feet tall, a mantid being, but it's blue, it's bright blue. And that is a scientist. That person is a scientist. And is very curious about the human species and about the way it moves on the earth. And, very interesting person. But I can't even tell you how many places that I have experienced and civilizations, different types. A lot of them look just like us, by the way.
Have you ever heard of a terrestrial reptilian species, like an Earth originated reptilian species, or saurian, some people might say, a race whose lineage traces back to the dinosaurs?
Mm-hmm.
There's some, contactee stories of a race like that. Have you ever?
I've heard tell of it, and I've read about it. I've never experienced it, and I don't believe. I think I would remember if any of my experiencers would have had that kind of a tale to tell. I've never had anybody tell me that they've had an interaction with one. A lot of those people talk about them coming from the inner earth, or living in cave or subterranean type dwellings. But I have never experienced those. So I can't speak to it. Might be interesting to experience one though, but who knows?
Now,
You?
say again.
How about you?
Well, no, I haven't had any like direct, in-person contact experiences at all. But I did have a dream one time where a communication came through of, I guess, a being purporting to be of that race. And it was honestly, being that it was in a dream state, when I, came to in the waking state, I lost, the bulk of it. And I honestly don't remember, 95% of it. But it was a long sort of transmission, telepathic transmission with imagery. And it was something to do with their underground locations, bases, or inner earth caverns where they're located.
Cool.
And it almost seemed as if it wanted me to write something about it, or to inform the public. I'm a writer part-time, and it almost seemed to be suggesting something like that. And if I remember right, it was a little bit terse. It was a little bit like stern.
Correct.
Yeah. And yeah, so I did have something like that happen, but it's puzzling. I don't know what to make.
The whole interview talking to you guys, I'm like, oh, I would love to work with each of you. So if you ever want to, just let me know. We'll have some fun. We can go in, what many people think are dreams. Well, let me just back up. I believe dreams are just us tapping into our other life realities, basically, other frequencies of our experience. So dreams are not made up things. They're not just the effluence that's left over from your daily activities, although they might get translated with some of that material when you wake up. But as a yogi, dream science, dream technology is a huge part of being a true yogi, whether people know that or not. It's not just about, doing physical poses on a yoga mat wearing Lululemon clothes, right? So, and most people don't know that the great psychologist and thought leader Carl Jung was a yogi almost his whole life. That's where he got the archetypes from. And that's where he got his philosophy from. So I would say that, it would be interesting to go into a quantum hypnotic state and take you back to that dream. See the whole thing, because you record everything, whether you know it or not. And scientists now know this. Everything you experience walking around in this spacesuit is recorded. And it's kept on the onboard system, but it's put in the cache. So you don't, because it would be too much information. So to handle all the time.
Right.
But we can we can go into that archive anytime, tap into it and see it fully. Maybe you would get the message you need. And as a writer, if you're supposed to write a book about it or a screenplay or something, that might be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to do that.
And it would be super handy for me to do. I would love to go in there and see what that's about.
Yeah, I think we should absolutely do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my offer stands for both you guys. Just, just let me know if you ever want to play. We'll do it as friends.
Mm-hmm.
No worries. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now you was talking about that you went to these different bases and things.
Mm-hmm.
What did some of these other places look like? Like I remember you explained to Jim what the first one, I guess with the Greys, what that looked like, and what those beings look like.
Yeah.
Give us a description of some of these other ones that you had from what you can remember, because I know that it's that's a lot to take.
A lot of them are not physical. They're not in the third dimension, so they're not physical. So it's really hard to describe. It's more energy. Sometimes it's light or sound or combinations of those. But if you want to hear about some physical things, like one that I can think of that's very clear is was another physical place, a planet, but it was in another dimension. So it was, or another frequency, the third dimension, but a higher level. And I was the ET. And I had a name. I didn't really have a name, but I said they called me brother. And I was an archivist. And I would travel around with these other beings who looked like me. It was kind of humanoid, but more like those tall grays I was talking about. But in this scenario, wore kind of almost like monks' robes, very rudimentary, natural fiber, not dyed. And it was on a kind of like a desert planet. But the buildings were made out of these tall, some were crystal and some were like slate or flint, very sharply, very tall, sharply pointed buildings. And our ships were made, they were spiky like that, but they were conscious and would travel around, the quantum field and gathering data from the different types of civilizations, bring it back there, and would archive it in the Great Libraries, what he called it, the Great Library. So I'd done this for millennia, and it was fascinating. But the people all had, it was almost like a great library planet, and they all had this kind of function. Some traveled and gathered the data. Some compiled the data and made sense of it. Some archived it on these special, like they were little cubes. It wasn't paper or magnetic tape or CDs or anything. They were like these cubes, and the cubes were levitating in these buildings. And most of the cubes were about the size of my hand, and you could see through them. They would make prisms. If you looked in it, it was a prism. So that was really fascinating. Another one was a planet of water, and all the beings were aquatic beings, but they were higher level consciousness than we are here. Very intelligent. And I often wonder if that's not where like dolphins and whales and the cetaceans on our planet kind of came from. But they were all about inducing new types of biologies, new types of life. They were scientists, and so they were always making new types of DNA, I guess. I don't know, but it was all aquatic, and that was a really beautiful planet. Wow, it's gorgeous. And it was shocking to me the first time I was there because I could breathe underwater. Like you said, you kind of tensed up when the being was calling your name or telling you something about your name. when I first went there, I freaked out because I thought I'm going to drown immediately. I was underwater, and yet I was fine, you know?
You know, I have to stop you right there. Jim,
Mhm.
what did I tell you? What happened when I was young?
Yeah.
When
the
I
pool.
was when I was very, very young, and most people can't. They're not even supposed to have many memories, especially vivid, when you're 3-4 years old.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I remember I had these little blow up things on my arm, and my Uncle Ray lived right next to us in Florida, and they weren't. I don't believe they were home, and I snuck over there and put on these floaties that I had, and I jumped in the water.
Wow.
And then, for whatever reason, I don't know if I took them off or how it worked, but I was at the edge of the deep end, and I was crawling down the ladder, and I let go.
Oh, wow.
And as I'm in the water and I'm slowly sinking, I could breathe. I could totally breathe under the water. And then I remember somehow getting back onto that ladder and then coming up and doing it again, and was underneath the water again. But then I seen these dark figures. I could not explain it. It's like when you're trying to look through the water, you can't
Yes.
make up who it is, but you
And
can
it's
see
distorted.
a
Yeah.
couple of people there.
Yeah.
So I seen that and I witnessed that. And as you were just saying about breathing under the water, I was like, wow, how interesting is that?
Yeah. Maybe we're in the same place. I don't know. But yours look like a swimming pool. Because you do they do I don't know if they place this on us or our ego personality places it on us for, comfort's sake, but we do get screen memories, screen images of things, like I saw space monkeys, and now, my whole life I've seen giant owls. Susan Alway, who's may still be on here, who said hi at the beginning, she saw giant jackrabbits, and she had missing time of like 4 to 6 hours. Her story is really incredible. If you haven't ever had her on your show, you should try. She's amazing. But often they will place the memory of what we are experiencing in a familiar place or with familiar components that at least what they think are familiar and comforting or not threatening. That's why rabbits or owls or monkeys, instead of the thing that looks out like the monster in Stranger Things, which some of them look like too, but they may not be bad at all. They may not be evil at all. They just look like a big giant tentacle thing, so yeah.
And that would be a familiar, they would be like, okay, like I mentioned, I was in a pool in the pool.
Yeah.
And but I could have been someplace else, and the pool was a familiar place.
Yeah.
That's why I was there.
That you like. So you felt okay. And it could have very well have been your uncle's pool, and they were interacting with you there. So we never know till we go in, but it's always fun to find out, Sometimes it's really surprising too. But
Todd, do you think that it's possible, because this just came up in my mind, that you fell in and maybe like this was a point in your life where your life was threatened, maybe you would have drowned, and something, whoever those figures were, did something, through whatever, means, psychic or I don't know, technological or otherwise, and somehow enabled you to breathe through that.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't drown.
Perish. Yeah. Quantum technology. I mean, think of what we do as humans. If we see we're out scuba diving with a group and somebody's tank fails. What do? You go over and take yours out of your mouthpiece out of your mouth and put it in theirs so they can breathe too. And it's a buddy system till you get them back to safety. It may have been something like that,
Yeah, that's a very good possibility. Maybe I was holding on to the rail and slipped off into the water. I mean, that's very good possibility.
Yeah.
So thanks for that input there, Jim.
Yeah. That's insightful, Jim, because there have been so many instances of healing and or being saved from a perilous condition in these experiences that I keep getting.
That's the one moment where, you might have an encounter, when they need to step in, at that point, because it's critical.
Yeah. It's been known to happen a lot,
Yeah.
I've been helped a lot in my life and healed from several things that I was told I'd never come back from. And I'm here and I'm still kicking. So,
and you seem highly empathetic
empathic. Yes.
Yes, you seem like that. And because you had said about us being able to feel people. I mean, we can walk into I can walk into a place, whether it's a old house or whatever, and I can feel everything. I can feel the anger, happiness, sadness. Ronnie, she has it really bad where she is extremely empathic and she picks up on a lot of very sad things, and sometimes she'll just break down and cry, So yes, that really, with you and the work that you do, has to be, that's extremely important, because you're going to use all your senses, all your gifts that you brought out over those years, and really connect with the person. They're gonna truly latch onto you and trust you, and you're going to make a difference in their life by them being able to tell their story to you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most satisfying things, although I don't allow anybody to latch on, because, we don't want to have any transference or anything or dependency. My work is empowering people and showing them that they are completely powerful and unlimited. And so that's why I teach them all the tools and everything. But as far as the empathy, I can feel, like I said, I pair with them basically in the session. Doesn't matter what we're doing. If I'm channeling, I'm doing energy work, I'm doing hypnosis work, counseling. It's all part of the same thing anyway, but I literally pair with them, bond with them for a while. And I think it's comforting. It's like, you take a kid into the haunted house at the amusement park for the first time, they want to hold your hand, right? They feel safer. Whether you can really save them from the ghost flying around in the room, that they think is happening through the projector or the projector, but you couldn't if it was real, but they feel safer. And so that's what I do, vibrationally. I hold their hand or I hug them or whatever. And it's incredible, because for the last, 7 or 8 years, I've done most of my work virtually. And for a while, people were, hesitant. They're like, no, I need to be in the same room with you. I don't feel safe, or I don't feel like we'll make a good connection or anything. I'm like, nothing separates us. We're all one. We are, via quantum entanglement, already very connected. And so over the years, I just don't even think about it. I used to have to explain it to people and talk them into it and everything. Now I don't. I mean, look at us. We're in 3 different places. I feel as close to you guys as I do my dog, who's trying to get in the door back there behind me, a few feet away. So having empathy is a wonderful tool for this work, but it is a wonderful tool for being a good human. And we all have it. And you can work it like a muscle. And all it takes is just noticing the goodness in another person that they may not even see in themselves. So it's helpful it's another discipline, it's another practice. You go to the grocery store and you're standing in line and you don't know the cashier from Eve, but you make a sincere statement about them. Wow, I really like your hair. Or you have the nicest smile. And it might even change their whole day. They light up, like a person like that feels invisible 8 hours a day. And it can be a drudgery, but that can really spark their life. And then they go about their day differently. And it makes you feel good too. But it also is strengthening your empathy muscle. Soon you're going to go to the grocery store and you're standing in line and you start to get information they broadcast to you. Gosh, I'm really worried about my sister, and so you don't go up there and say, hey, your sister's going to be okay, but you can pair with them better and open up a conversation about how's your day, how's your day been? Well, I'm not having such a good day. I'm worried about my sister. I got some bad news. And pretty soon you're going to start validating yourself. And when you do, then you're building that muscle. But it's very important.
Yeah. And, I find it also fascinating, and it's a part of wanting to learn more and see what other gifts that I have that I was given, and I'm trying to now find out about this part of my life, which I believe had something to do with connection between possible alien beings. And that's where I am at this point. I've went through all I went through all my paranormal things that happened when I was younger and throughout my life. And I can only go so far with ghosts and hauntings. I can only go so far because you kind of hit a wall. But with the ETs, there's way more to it now. It's very much conscience and trying to unravel these little mysteries that come in like spurts. You don't get it all at one time.
No,
it comes
you can't
out
eat an elephant in one bite. So they're very cognizant of that. So
yes, and those little pieces, and you're scratching your head, going, "Wow, how do I interpret this?"
Yeah. And they space things out sometimes too, if they're if that's part of the program, so that you can integrate. And I think it's really important that you integrate your experiences. And that's the reason why I have an online experiencer group on Facebook called The Vortex. Anybody can get in there. It's a private group, but all you have to do is request it and we'll let you in. We have monthly meetings and we all share openly. It's a non-judgmental place. And then I share some tools every time and help bring all that together. And that's why I do the experiencer counseling or the contact counseling. And I call it contact, but again, it might be somebody who lives in what they call a haunted house and they just don't know how to deal with it, or they had a scary experience when they were a kid and they don't even know what to label it. That's why I do that work, because when you can crack the code of fear and bring it into some other context that makes more sense to you, then it's not so scary, or maybe it's not scary at all. Because really fear is just brought about by misunderstanding or not understanding.
Yes.
Right.
Jim, do you have any further questions that you'd like to ask Debz?
Yeah, maybe the last thing I wanted to ask was about the star teachers. And maybe you could tell us what's the most important lesson in those teachings.
Yeah.
What do they want us to know the most?
Well,
Maybe.
the first thing is that we're all one, and they iterate this every time. They are us. They're us on a different frequency. They call us their future ancestors. They say that what we do right now, especially in this lifetime, this timeline, sets up a sequence of events so that they can be alive. They literally are humans. They say that the biggest message is they say, you did it. You made it. They say that we come up probably very close to the edge of a cataclysmic global disaster of some sort, perpetuated by us, unfortunately, or fortunately. And right before we blow each other up or whatever it is that we do, we suddenly have this revelation. If we don't pull together and work together and use our differences, our variables in a coherent way to change things quickly, we're going to die. We're all going to die. So they say we come together, we start to become coherent, harmonious, and then things really start to take off. We become more spacefaring. We eventually become interdimensional volitionally, and we evolve to the point where we don't even live on planet Earth anymore. Most of us, we're, interdimensional beings, i.e. them. And they are reaching down and helping us with clues about how to make this happen. And they say they're not going to do our homework for us because that would be very irresponsible. But they say they're us. And so the main message is start now. And that's, I said it earlier, be the best person you can be. Start with simple things. Recycle or upcycle your materials, use less stuff, consume less, give more, be of service to others, love yourself and love others, learn techniques to go within and really get in there and kind of clean out your basement so that you can raise your vibrational state and sustain it. We don't go anywhere, by the way. They say you just change your dial till you're tuned into a frequency that is more pleasing, and then you sustain your focus there. And all these others are like, they're just probabilities. So they're like infinite video screens of movies of different lives that you're living all at once forever, all the time in the same location, but they're all on pause, except for the one you're focusing on. Right? So if you don't like the one you're in, it behooves you to work from the inside out to raise your vibrational state so that you can start to experience the type of life you do want. And then you just lock it in. But that's the message.
Beautiful. Yeah, that resonates with me very much. Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Now, Debz, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they do it?
DebzShakti.com is my website. Most of my socials are under the name Debz Shakti, DebzShakti, other than Facebook, which just deleted all my Debz Shakti accounts last week.
Oh,
For
no.
some weird reason. They said I violated community standards, but you can't get a hold of a human to find out what it was. I appealed it 3 times and I failed every time. And we're thinking it probably was because that's not my legal name. So you can find me under DL Buller on Facebook if you want to. But every other thing, my YouTube channel where my podcast Hidden Variables is on, and 1,000 other things. The website has tons of free material for everybody, years and years of material to learn from. But Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of those are Debz Shakti. And you can contact me from any of those things, including the website.
Fantastic. And I'll put that in in the comment section so that everybody can find you, reach out to you. And I think I sent you one on your Facebook. I seen you sent you had shared the event.
Yeah.
So yes, Debz, I thank you so much. I've learned a ton. You are a fascinating person, and I'm honored to have been able to meet you and talk to you and pick your brain a little bit about all these different things. And I know we was all over the place, but it was very, very it was good. I'll tell you that much.
It was my great honor and privilege, you guys. You are two of the most inspiring hosts. I really enjoyed this, and I hope we can do it again sometime. And I'm absolutely, I really would love to play with you guys sometime. Anytime, just hit me up, and we'll make time to do that and go in and see what we can find out, because you two are really interesting. But for everyone, I am really busy, gratefully. So if you do reach out to me, it may take a day or two before I can get back to you, but know that I will, and I'm here for you. And I just love all of you. That's who I am.
Well, we're hoping that someone that's viewing this or listening to this, perhaps they had an experience and they can relate to the things that you're saying. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We want to get your information out there to people. People watch this, resonate with you, and then they say, "Oh, wow, I had a very similar experience. I'm going to reach out to Debz and talk to her about that." So,
you guys, thank you. It's so awesome of you to do that. And everybody, if you haven't seen Alien Abduction Answers, it's streaming almost everywhere, and you can buy it on a DVD, even on Amazon if you want to. But I think it's even free, like on Tubi and a couple of other things now, because it's been out about 2 years. So I highly recommend, even if you're not into ET stuff, watch it, because there's an energy that we put into that movie. We did things very, very, very consciously to reach people, to tell them this overarching message about taking care of each other in the earth. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to take because you sent me the trailer. I'm going to take that trailer and I'm going to put your information on there.
Cool.
Let people watch. That's going to be on Paranomaly, and we'll put it in Paranomaly's group page as well.
Awesome.
That way people can see that, and again, that might resonate with them, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I got to see this." So
yeah.
I know I want to see it.
Please do. You will probably see yourself in that movie somewhere.
Yes, probably. All right, Debz, thank you so much. You have a good one.
You too, guys. Thank you very much. Much love. And I'll end by saying "in Lakesh," which is a phrase that the ETs gave the Mayans millennia ago. It means "I'm another you."
Oh. Well, thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.
I want to thank all our people that was watching, listening, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in with us, and we wish you well. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranormallypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranormallypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranormally Beyond Disclosure.